Today on the Winded Podcast, I'm joined by Maki Jenner, who made history over the weekend by becoming the first woman to call play by play for a National Lacrosse League game. We talk about her work with TSN and the Halifax Thunderbirds, the game of lacrosse, and what it means to inspire the next generation of girls in sports. The Winded Podcast starts now. Welcome back to the Winded Podcast. I'm your host, Shamus Sullivan, and today the Winded Podcast is going international. We're not going too far, though. We're just going to our neighbors to the north, and we have a very special guest coming from Canada today. We have the very talented Maki Jenner on the show today. Maki, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat a little bit about our careers today.
Of course, of course. So, if you happen to Google the name Maki Jenner right now, you will see all sorts of articles from the CBC all the way down to local country radio stations talking about the historic weekend that Maki was a part of. Maki became the first woman to do play by play for the National Lacrosse League. Maki, what a huge accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a whirlwind, and I feel like I'm still like riding the high of the adrenaline from the weekend. Starting to come down now, but yeah, it was really exciting.
So, Maki is a communications manager for the Halifax Thunderbirds, also a regular contributor to TSN, which for those in America, that is even bigger than what ESPN is in America is. That's what TSN is in Canada.
Yeah.
Very successful. And if that wasn't enough, she's also the head of player development for Blue Nose Lacrosse, which we can get into that a little bit later. But I want to talk about, how it felt when you got the call that you were going to do play by play. I know you've done color in the past. Play by play is obviously a different animal. What were the emotions and everything? And what did you do to kind of prepare for the moment? Because you had a little bit of notice to get ready for it.
Yeah, I kind of found out before the season started, but like last year after I'd done color commentary for the first time, we were kind of joking around a little bit with the crew afterwards, just how like, oh, all I have left to do is play by play and blah blah blah, and never really thought anything of it. And then this year, obviously, there were some opportunities where we had some space available for me to do a few games, and so yeah, I actually found out because I was we got the production schedule kind of, and my name wasn't on the list for sideline reporting for our home games. And so I was like, "Oh no, like what happened? Did I do something wrong?" I wasn't sure. And so I texted our producer and I was like, "Hey, like I just wanted to check in before the season." And he gave me a call and said, "Yeah, like we actually want you to do play by play for a few games." And obviously the first one in February. And so it was crazy. I didn't expect it at all. It was just like an overwhelming, like, wow, I can't believe this is really happening. Just another kind of avenue of the broadcast world to get to try. And get to work alongside Pat Gregoire, who I've done all of our Halifax broadcasts with, but I'm usually the reporter and he's our color commentator. And so it was the first time that we were going to get to work together in the booth, which was really exciting for me too. But yeah, it was definitely a whirlwind of emotions, but just super excited to get after it and get to do all the prep work to get there.
Yeah, it must have been a little bit comforting knowing, that you have worked with Pat, so you had that relationship already. So being able to translate it to upstairs in the booth probably helped you a little bit. Lacrosse is a huge deal in the Jenner family. Obviously, your dad played, your uncle's a broadcaster, your mom played in college, you played. So talk about what lacrosse has meant to your family and how it's been something that's kind of pulled you together.
Yeah, it's definitely full circle. And I think even when I took the job out in Halifax, like it really felt like everything was just, coming to completion in the sense that it was the first sport that I was really shown as a child. And I, don't remember going to all of my dad's games because I was so little, but I know that I was there. And I remember watching my uncle play. My godfather also played in the NLL for a really long time. And so, that was one of my like core memories growing up was like getting to go watch all these different NLL games. And it was really one of the sports that I obviously took a liking to. And it was never, like, forced upon me to play, but obviously encouraged, just knowing that my parents had such a history with it as well. So, yeah, I started playing when I was 4, and continued all the way through, but, it's definitely been a journey, highs and lows, in college and recruiting process and all of that, and that's kind of turned into, what has become, like, the start of my career, and so it's really cool to get to have kind of the ins and outs of just knowing the sport my whole life and getting to report on, the players that some of them I grew up watching play, some of them I went to school with, and some of them my sister and brother's friends. Like it's crazy, just the tight knit community that is lacrosse. And so yeah, it's definitely I would describe it as like full circle. Getting to do this for a living.
Everybody talks about when they think Canada, they think hockey. I don't think people realize how big the sport of lacrosse is
Yeah.
in Canada. It's actually the national pastime, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, we kind of like split with hockey and hockey's kind of winter, lacrosse is summer, but yeah, it's huge and especially box lacrosse. Like I know field typically is more popular down in the States, but box is growing and like we got to see the women's US team won the World Lacrosse Box Championships, the first ever last year or 2 years ago, I guess now, in Utica, which is just like huge for the game to see like the growth of that happening down there and it's really exciting, but yeah, it's huge. I mean, I have 2 younger siblings and they're playing down in the States in college as well, but, we all grew up with a stick in our hand and, a lot of my friends growing up were all lacrosse players, and so, it's definitely something where it's growing in different pockets of the country, but, overall, yeah, it's huge.
It's great. I grew up playing lacrosse. My dad was a high school lacrosse player, and it was
Awesome.
just like you know, as soon as I could walk, there was a stick in my hand, so I
Yep.
love the game. And, when I went to high school, it, really wasn't that big of a deal. Like, there was no in my town, there was no youth program, there was no anything. It was just kinda like a niche kind of hobby kinda thing that some
Sure.
people played, and it's so great to look at now how big it's becoming really everywhere, and it's just a great game, and both, I never played indoors. I played hockey, I got enough, crashing into the boards that way, so
Sure.
I don't know if I could handle it in lacrosse too, that too much of a strain on my body, but you played both, you played box and you played, field lacrosse. Which did you prefer? And what are you kind of obviously besides the boards, what are the main differences between the games?
Yeah, so I feel like there's definitely a little bit like more differences between like women's field and then box lacrosse just because women's field there's 11 players on the field and like no gear rules are completely different, and then box for women and men's are like the same, so 5 on the floor at a time, same equipment, same level of contact once you get to a certain age. I actually preferred playing field lacrosse. I just felt like I was like more built for that sport, but I prefer to watch box lacrosse, so, like, there's definitely, like, a bit of a difference, um, in, like, my taste for watching versus playing, but yeah, like, I really loved playing field lacrosse, and then I think it was just fun to have, like, so much more space, even though there are more people on the field, like, it was just, a different game and, like, you took different strategies in and out of it, and yeah, so I think those are kind of the main differences between the sports. Like in men's, there's 9 on the field for field, but they also use like the 6-foot poles for defense, which is like very different than box because they're all the same indoor. So yeah, obviously the rules, sizing of the field, and that sort of stuff. But there is now like sixes lacrosse, which is booming down in the States, and that will what will be in the Olympics in 2028. And that's almost like indoor, but outdoor. Like, there aren't any face-offs, so it's, like, really quick back and forth. There aren't the long poles that there are in men's, but it's just, like, a really quick version of the game, so it's kind of like merging those 2 together. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch any of the variations of it, but, yeah, those were just kinda, like, my preferences.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the sixes. I'm very intrigued by that because
It's crazy.
the speed of box lacrosse, I mean, obviously, field lacrosse has a level of speed, but there's so much space that it
Yeah,
spreads out. I went to one box lacrosse game at the TD Garden years and years ago, and it was like the most electric thing I've ever been to. And
yeah.
I have to get to another one, but it was just so much fun. I want to transition to your work with Blue Nose Lacrosse as the head of player development. Um, what does that kind of? what do you contribute there, and, what do you get out of that?
Yeah, so again, like I'm from Victoria, BC, and Victoria has always been a hotbed for lacrosse players. That's where the Gate brothers are from, Tommy Marichek. There are so many big name lacrosse players from the city of Victoria, current and previous. And they continue to pump out a lot of talent. And so it was very normal for me to be witness to greatness in terms of like the talent that was coming out of that city. And it was always very high level. We had great coaches. And then when I moved to Halifax to take the job a few years ago, whenever I was competing at national championships, Team BC, which was like my provincial team, we would always really have to compete with Team Ontario. Like those were the two big two teams that really ended up in the gold medal game for like box and field pretty much every year. But Alberta started to compete. And now you're starting to see Nova Scotia grow a little bit. But when I moved here, the women's field lacrosse side of things was really lacking. They didn't have a provincial team, they only had one club team. The girls didn't even know that they could go down to the US and play in college. Their parents were like, I don't want to say, like there was a lack of education and just what the potential experience and pathway for their daughters and these girls could be when it comes to lacrosse. And so something that I really wanted to do when I moved here was show these girls what they could do because there was so much talent. They just didn't have the right kind of guidance in terms of learning about the different opportunities that they could have. And so, yeah, so I started doing that this year. And we took a team down to Boston for the last few years and at recruiting tournaments and, started teaching them how to put game film together, writing emails to college coaches and just kind of going through that process. And so now we have a bunch of girls that are in the midst of, figuring out what the next steps are going to be, going on different visits. And so it's really exciting to see like this batch of young women that I kind of started working with a few years ago now get to that next level and start to understand that they can really take this and use it moving forward. And so, um, you know, I just think back to all of the incredible coaches and leaders that I had growing up and I feel like it would be so wasted for these girls to not do anything with the talent that they have. And they're a great group of girls. And so yeah, so it was just really important to me to give back because I just think about how much that impacted my experience and wanted to do the same for the next generation.
That's great. One of the videos that I saw, one of the news stories, they interviewed a couple of your players, and it was
Yeah.
so great to see, like, how much, of an impact that you have on them, obviously as their coach, but also what you're doing in the booth.
Mhm.
What does you mentioned that you've had, some inspiration for you. What does that mean to you to kind of turn around and be that inspiration for, somebody who was in your shoes, they're in your shoes now that you were in, as a kid?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, I think when it comes to lacrosse, like playing the sport, I was so lucky to be surrounded by so much talent and knowledge, and they were so willing to give back. And so I think that part really came easily to me just because of everything that was kind of instilled to me. But when it comes to the career side and everything outside of sport, I wasn't able to have a ton of like female inspiration at the time growing up because there just wasn't that many women, in the broadcast booth. But now, even just in the last 5-10 years, there's so many more. And, you mentioned hockey, like that's obviously the big thing here. And having so many powerful women step into those roles. And, last year, Kenzie Lalonde, who's actually from the Maritime region, she was the first female to do play by play for an NHL game. And, she's given time back to me. And, she's always there if I need to pick her brain or ask questions. And so I think for me, like, even though I'm kind of into my career a little bit, still having those women look out for me and offer their words of wisdom and advice and everything just again helps inspire me to want to do that for these girls. And I think it's just so important for them to understand that there is a place for them and that there is representation happening, especially in lacrosse, because like you said, like when you were in high school, it's just such a niche thing. And yes, it's absolutely growing, but it's still not where it's going to end up. And so any kind of role that I can have in helping these young women know that there's a place for them in the sport, no matter what that looks like, is super important to me.
Yeah, when I started this podcast, I wasn't really sure what direction it was gonna take,
Yeah.
and, I just knew that I wanted to do it, and I just started doing it, and my very first guest was, this kinda diehard Boston Bruins fan who's built this pretty good presence. And
Yeah,
after talking to her, I kind of quickly learned that talking to women in sports was kind of the direction that I wanted to take it.
I
And
love that.
one thing that is kind of like an overarching theme among everybody that I've spoken to is just that kind of like girlhood, for lack of better term, that, everybody is kind of like looking to kind of help the other one along and very supportive of each other. And, as I, follow different people on social media, seeing the mutual follows of just people that are in different fields, but still, women in sports. Um, I just think that that's so cool. And it is kind of made me wanna stay on this path of continuing to talk to people like you and other, talented women in the field. But yeah, what do you think about, where women in sports is right now? It obviously gets a lot of attention, and I the great thing I think is that it's not a polarizing topic anymore. I don't think it's not getting the same, and probably in quiet corners that nobody cares about, but it's not like I haven't seen anything that's like, what is Maki Jenner doing calling this game?
Yeah.
It's like you've proven your worth, and I think that it's great that that's where we're at in the conversation.
100%. And I think, for me and so many of the women that I look up to and have been able to network with and talk to, it's just like they're so driven. And I think there's almost that expectation that we have to over prepare and do a little bit more just to, like you said, like prove that you know what you're talking about and go in there and kind of own that space. But I think that's what's made it so great is like there's so much confidence. And I think before you're right, like comment sections have been flooded with negative things, but like I've seen a few and you're always gonna get that, but at the same time, it's been so overwhelmingly supportive that it's incredible, and just so many different women in different fields, like you say, reach out, and whether they're in the media space or coaching space or managing space or broadcast space, like, everyone just wants to build each other up, and it's like nothing I've ever been a part of, and, like, again, I've been a part of so many teams, but, you're always fighting for that spot, you always want to perform your best, and yes, you're helping your team as a collective group, but seeing these women as individuals, like, support me and some of these people that I've looked up to for so long reach out and congratulate me is incredible. Um, and it's awesome to see the attention that women's sports is getting because it is great. And like I just remember being at the World Championships for box lacrosse a few years ago and you know, the men that got to go watch the women's games were like, "This is great. Like, why have we never had this before? Why has no one ever talked about this before?" Because it was great. Like the talent was so high. And you're seeing the same thing with the PWHL, the NWSL and NSL up here in Canada. The WNBA is taking off unrivaled. Like there's just so much support because people are realizing, okay, like these women can ball out. Like we're, we're at that level. And then just everyone buying into that is so special. So it's really cool to see that like we're finally at that place where there is so much support behind it.
My favorite thing about women's sports are the personalities, and
Yeah.
I'll say is that any athlete, even people in the media that you kind of talk to or listen to, they are genuine to themselves and they don't use kind of like the default cookie cutter, like cliche answers that a lot of the men give. And that is the biggest thing that I've kind of found, I cover high school hockey, and the difference in the interviews with the girls versus the guys is night and day. And it's like you never know what the girls are gonna say, and the guys I could guess what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
Um, so that's great. But I did wanna talk to you about something else that I know is important to you, and that is mental health. I know you've been an advocate for that, I am as well, and kind of, talk about your journey with, I saw that, sadly you kind of fell out of love of the game for lacrosse or lost that passion that you had. Great that you were able to find it back in a different avenue, but why don't you talk about, mental health?
Yeah. I think I've always like been a very anxiously running human. I just like remember even just in elementary school and middle school, like test anxiety, performance anxiety. I've always been an athlete. And so just wanting to hold myself to like the highest standard. And I don't think that I ever had like really any outside pressures. Like my parents were always very supportive. I think it mainly came from myself and just the type A perfectionist person that I tend to be. And so, I always expected the highest for myself. I always expected to, keep running on high until I could achieve what I wanted to. And I think I had a really hard time balancing like that drive and passion with like overworking myself and putting too much pressure on myself. And so, the rules have now changed in terms of recruiting at how young and old you can talk to college coaches. But when I was going through my recruiting process, you could really commit to a school at any age. And so I was 15 when I decided to make the decision to commit to the University of Denver. And at the time, it was like dream school, so excited, couldn't wait. I felt like I was on cloud nine. And that gave me like 4 or 5 years in high school before I actually got to the school for not only myself as a person to like mature and develop and like think about my life, but also the university and the school and the team to like progress and get better and all this. And so I went from being like a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond, and everyone else was like their star where they were and like bringing it all together. And it was really like shell shocking to me. And I just felt like I couldn't keep up. I felt like I couldn't compete. I was dealing with like so much self doubt that I like ran myself completely dry. I wasn't sleeping, like having, problems with eating. Like it was just so much anxiety about like, I'm not good enough. And, the only part that really kept me in it was actually the academic part was when I was taking journalism, like the storytelling, like that avenue was always kind of there. Um, and so, yeah, I really struggled, and when I went back after Christmas break, I decided that I thought my time was, like, done playing. I couldn't handle it. I was diagnosed with major depression and major anxiety and, you know, tried so many things, and, like, I'm so appreciative of the school because, like, at Denver, my coaches were incredible, and, our team staff, and we had a team doctor and a therapist that, like, the resources were unbelievable, and if I didn't have them, like, I don't know what would have happened, and I'm just, like, so forever grateful for that. But, when I decided to step away from lacrosse, like, I lost my identity because I think a lot of people will identify themselves with the success and level that they're at with their sport, and I find that really common with young athletes, and so I was like, I was a lacrosse player, that's all I was, and now I wasn't, and I felt like an embarrassment to go home to my family and friends and all these people that had hyped me up to get there. Um, and it was really hard to just, like, figure out what I was other than a lacrosse player, even though now looking back, like, so many things, but in the moment, you just don't know that. So I made the decision to go back to the sport, and I went to a different school in Minnesota, and just had a different experience, a hard time with coaches and, treatment of players, and I saw a lot of my teammates leave, and it was really hard for me, as a leader on the team to witness my friends dealing with what they dealt with, and then I started feeling it, and I dealt with some injuries as well, uh, and that wasn't so much of like a "You're not good enough." It was, being questioned from my coaches and coming at me and trying to defend my teammates. There was just so much going on who I was as a person, and I felt like I didn't know who I was. And so again, I decided to to leave, and at that point, I was just more angry at the sport than, like, when I left Denver where I just, like, felt all that support, like, I just didn't have it, and so, um, it was hard, and I moved home and, decided to like, my dad asked me if I wanted to help my brother's team coaching, and so I was like, "Sure," like, I may as well just go try that, but had no interest in playing, and, from there, coaching really started it, and then continuing to write about lacrosse, and that's really where I found that love for the sport again, and just telling the stories and also talking to other athletes about their experiences and understanding that there's so many other things that these athletes go through that aren't talked about enough. Um, and so that was something that was really special for me and important to me was to just be vulnerable about it because once I opened up about it, so many people go through the same thing. And I think you're starting to see more support at the university and high school levels and pro levels for athletes with mental health now. But I felt like at the time it was night and day versus, Denver and what they could offer and then my smaller school in Minnesota. And it was really important for me to kind of let people know that it's not necessarily going to be easy every single time you go somewhere new and I'm like retrospect I'm so grateful that I like was able to go through those because I think it made me stronger as a person and more secure in who I was but yeah at the time it was so hard and gosh like you're still so young when you go into college at first and how are you supposed to know how to deal with these situations but yeah through it I think I'll always continue to be vocal about that and be vulnerable with the girls that I do work with and let them know that, like, not everything's picture perfect, and that's okay, but all of these experiences will help build who you are for the future, and just making sure that, they surround themselves with people that support them and can help uplift them is, like, really important for me to help kind of, um, show those people going through it.
Appreciate you sharing that because
Absolutely.
I couldn't have said it better. I've dealt with mental health reflecting my whole life, and honestly, I'm 36 years old, and for most of my life, mental health wasn't even like a topic.
Yeah,
And it's so great to hear people continue to have the conversation about it. That's why I don't shy away from it because I think there's always somebody that needs to hear that it's okay to talk about it.
absolutely.
And hearing, somebody like you, if, anybody listens to what you just said, and they can relate to that and can get some help, I think that there's nothing better than that.
Absolutely.
And the more people are willing to have the discussion, the better off overall people will feel. Um, so yeah, I appreciate you sharing that
Of
today.
course. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I will say the Olympics are going on right now. You're from Canada. It's, Winter Olympics. How much of the Olympics have you been watching?
A lot of it. And like it's the worst time of year for me to have like a 9 to 5 job because like even right now, like
Oh
we
yeah,
just watched the figure skating or sorry, the team pursuit and speed skating. Like there's just everything going on. Hockey, like anything, we've got it on. I've got it on like 4 different screens at once. So yes, I grew up like such a big fan of the Winter Olympics for sure. But obviously like the Summer Olympics are incredible too. But yeah, like one of my core memories was my family actually got to go to the 2010 Olympics and we watched skeleton luge, bobsleds, and skiing in Whistler. And it was one of the coolest experiences to this day. So yeah, I'm definitely a big Olympic fan.
that's I figured. I
Yeah,
figured. Yeah, I mean, as a USA hockey fan, I am very nervous that Team
yeah.
Canada looks like the best hockey team ever assembled.
I
It's
know.
unreal.
I will say the women's US team, so good.
Yeah,
So good. Like what you're feeling about the men's, I'm feeling about the women's in terms of anxiety because their
yeah.
women's team is elite. And like you said, the personalities, I love the personalities on Team USA Women's Hockey, I think in both teams, but like it's been great to kind of like follow some of them along what they're doing. But
Aaron
yeah.
Frankel and
Crazy.
her Caesar salad reviews.
Yes, it's so good. Like I'm here for it. I'm here for it. So yeah.
I actually later today I'm actually interviewing Elena, who's the in arena host of the Boston Fleet. So
That's
I'm
so
excited to
cool.
get into some Boston
Yes.
Fleet talk with her, talk
Yes, that's awesome.
PWHL. But I will say I have to since you're a representative of Canada right now, I got to ask you about the curling incident. What is going on with the cheating?
Okay, isn't that crazy? I will be so honest, like I don't know much about curling until right now. And 100% they're cheating. It's crazy. Like some of the side angles, like I just think the sport in general is like why aren't there like more replays and different angles that you can see it? Like I was not expecting Sweden and Canada to get so heated in that moment,
It was
but
crazy.
it's nuts. I'm like, really? We're supposed to have a reputation of
Yeah.
being like the nice ones and always sportsmanship and so seeing this is like wild. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the memes that have come of that are just too
It's
funny.
so good.
With all
Yeah.
the AI of them just, like, moving all the other stones and
Yep. I know. It's wild. Yeah.
but, yeah, I had to scratch that itch and had to get
No,
that out there.
no, I 100% am like it's funny too because my mom's actually American, and so, like, I have been a dual citizen, like, my whole life, and whenever it comes to the Olympics, like, I think growing up, it was more so, like, split, like, we would always have everything, and my mom's lived in Canada for, like, so long now that we've kinda, like, morphed her to the Canadian side of things, but, yeah, there's always those moments where she's like, "Well, I can always go the other way if I want to."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, who was it? There was somebody who I saw it was watching, they're on the Italian women's hockey team,
Mhm.
they've won 2 golds with Canada, and now they play for Italy
Yeah,
because they
crazy.
have the dual citizenship, which I think is great, especially if you have, if you're not just from one place, if you have,
Yeah,
why not represent? I think that's great.
100%. Yeah,
Well, Mackie, thank you so much. It was so fun to
absolutely.
talk to you. Congratulations again. I mean,
Thank
what a
you.
huge accomplishment. Very excited to continue to follow your career.
Yeah.
Um, your videos about Halifax are great. I love watching them, even though I'm not
Thank
an
you.
NLL fan, but it's like I feel, I'm a Thunderbirds fan because of
Perfect.
your videos. So,
We love to hear
um,
that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
of course. And let people know where they can find you. Obviously, you do TSN, you do follow the Halifax Thunderbird social media. But where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm across all major social media platforms at Maki Jenner. So feel free to give me a follow, and hopefully my content will do you guys justice.
It definitely will. I can
Perfect.
vouch for it for sure. All right, Mackie, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.